It all started with a pitcher of lemonade and a dream to dreams. Actually, my 10-year-old daughter Maddie's dream of selling homemade lemonade, just like she saw in the movies. And my 7-year-old son Noah's dream of making enough quarters to buy a used Nintendo Switch from the kid next door. We'd only been living in the Fairpoint Glade HOA for 6 months when it happened. And I still remember how proud Maddie looked, setting up that wobbly card table on the edge of our lawn. How carefully she arranged the paper cups and taped up her hand-colored sign, "Fresh lemonade, -50." It was one of those golden Saturdays in early June, the kind that feels like a promised summer is keeping. The air just warm enough to make cold lemonade feel like a small miracle. And neighbors walking their dogs or jogging by paused to drop coins into the tin and compliment Maddie on her entrepreneurial spirit. I was in the garage organizing some tools when I first noticed her Karen with her visor pulled tight over her forehead, her bright pink polo shirt tucked into crisp khakis, marching down the sidewalk like she was the mayor of a town no one voted for. She stopped at the lemonade stand, her face tight like she'd just bitten into a lemon that wasn't sweet enough, and said something to Maddie that made my daughter's smile wilt like a forgotten flower in the sun. I stepped out immediately, already sensing trouble, and caught the tail end of Karen's sentence, "Not approved by the HOA, and therefore subject to citation." I asked her to repeat herself, and she spun on me like a wind-up toy with an attitude problem, telling me that unsanctioned commercial activity was strictly forbidden by Fairpoint Glade HOA laws, Article 7, Section 2.3. I told her it was a lemonade stand, not a Fortune 500 startup. She didn't laugh. Instead, she whipped out her phone and started snapping photos of the table, the sign, even my children, which made Maddie start to cry and made Noah glare at her with the tiny clenched fists of a boy who didn't understand why someone would ruin something so sweet. "You'll be hearing from the compliance board," Karen said, like she was delivering a line she'd practiced in front of the mirror. And then she marched back down the sidewalk, triumphant in the way only a person who thinks rules matter more than kindness can feel. That night, we received a printed citation in our mailbox complete with a $50 fine and a warning that any future violations would result in escalating consequences. I wanted to tear it up, scream into the wind, maybe even throw a pitcher of lemonade at her door, but I looked at Maddie's face, still red-eyed from crying, and I knew this wasn't about the money or even the rule. It was about the message she'd tried to send to my kids. "You don't belong here. Not like this, not with your fun and joy and dreams taped to folding tables." So I did what any father would do when someone messes with his kid's eye. Got to work. I spent the next week poring over every HOA document I could get my hands on, printing bylaws, studying permit processes, and even booking a consultation with a friend who worked in local government. I learned that, while the HOA could prohibit unlicensed commercial activity, they couldn't override city ordinances that allowed certain small businesses to operate on private property. They were fully licensed, met public health codes, and didn't create traffic hazards. So I applied for a permit, then another, then a food handler's license. I registered a business in Maddie's name, Maddie and Noah's Juice Co., and when the paperwork cleared, I did the unthinkable. I tore up our front yard. I rented a contractor's tent, installed a countertop, bought an industrial juicer, set up a health code-approved hand-washing station, and laid brick pavers to meet code for customer foot traffic. It took 4 weeks and every spare dollar I had, but when it was done, it wasn't a lemonade stand anymore. It was a certified, permitted, tax-paying, healthy inspected, city-recognized juice bar on my own lawn. The grand opening was a Saturday in mid-July, and we advertised it on local Facebook groups, community forums, even left flyers at nearby churches and daycares. Maddie wore a custom pink apron. Noah handed out coupons for free samples, and our first customer was a woman in scrubs who said she came straight from the hospital after hearing about what Karen had done. That day we served over 120 cups of juice, fresh squeezed orange, watermelon mint, cucumber lime, and of course, lemonade. Karen came by around noon, sunglasses on, lips pursed so tight she could have snapped a pencil between them. She stood at the edge of our property, watched the line stretch across the sidewalk, saw the sign that read certified and permitted by City Ordinance number 18-203, and stormed off without a word. But the damage was already done for her. Anyway, the story caught fire in the neighborhood. People who never spoke to us started stopping by to show support. Other parents thanked us for standing up. The neighborhood kids came in waves, riding bikes and scooters, and handing Maddie quarters like they were treasure. I overheard one boy say to his sister, "This is the best HOA rebellion ever." And maybe it was, because it didn't stop at juice. Over the next few weeks, we added healthy snacks, then a small seating area, then partnered with a local bakery to sell cookies. We hired 2 high schoolers part-time and began offering summer youth internships. What started as a $5 lemonade stand had turned into something real, something resilient, something permanent. And Karen, she kept filing complaints, dozens of them. She cited traffic, she cited signage, she even tried to argue that the umbrellas violated the community aesthetic. But every time, I replied with a copy of our license, a citation of the relevant city codes, and a thank you note. By the end of the summer, the HOA board stopped returning her calls. At the next meeting, I was nominated to join the board myself by a unanimous vote. Asterisk. The day I joined the HOA board was the day Karen lost the illusion of control she had built like a fortress around herself. And though she kept her seat, her power began to erode like sand under waves that just kept coming. Not because I yelled, not because I bullied, but because I spoke clearly, confidently, and with the community behind me. At that meeting, I introduced a proposal for a community youth entrepreneur zone which would designate certain weekends throughout the year as open vendor days for kids to legally operate lemonade stands, cookie booths, handmade bracelet tables, whatever they could dream up without HOA interference, as long as parents supervised and safety protocols were followed. I brought data, how youth-led business initiatives increase confidence, teach financial literacy, and build bonds between neighbors. I brought stories from families who had thanked me. Some even cried. Karen tried to interrupt me twice, only to be gently silenced by the new board president, a retired Air Force colonel named Dennis, who had once been fined by Karen for unsanctioned flag display on Independence Day. He gave me the floor, and the motion passed 6-1. Karen was the one. Her vote didn't matter anymore, but she didn't disappear. Not Karen, no. She redoubled her efforts printing out flyers warning residents about unsightly commercial setups, cornering board members at grocery stores, even suggesting that my children were being exploited for profit. She wrote anonymous letters. She called the local health department, who confirmed our license was spotless. She took photos from inside her car and posted them to Facebook groups under pseudonyms that everyone knew were her screen names, like True Neighbor, 1984, and Peace and Quiet Please. And through it all, my kids flourished. Maddie became obsessed with new juice recipes. She'd stay up late, researching strawberry-kiwi ratios and seasonal citrus blends. Noah started building Lego models of what he called Juice Co., franchises in other cities, complete with miniature trucks and pretend hiring signs. I taught them about spreadsheets, budgeting, food waste, marketing, and we did it all together. For the first time since their mom passed away 2 years earlier, our home felt alive again. The juice bar wasn't just a stand, it was healing, purpose, laughter on a porch that had once sat to quiet. One evening, after a long day serving at a school fundraiser, Maddie asked if she could write a letter to the city, thanking them for supporting her stand. She didn't even mention Karen. My daughter, with more grace than most adults, simply wanted to share her gratitude. That's when I realized Karen had become irrelevant, not by force, but by community, choosing connection over control. But Karen didn't know she had lost. Not yet. That fall, she tried her final move. She called a surprise compliance audit of our property, arriving with 2 clipboard-carrying assistants and a camera, declaring we had expanded beyond the original business zoning footprint. She pointed to the picnic tables, to the small herb garden Maddie had planted for garnish leaves, to the chalkboard menu that Noah changed daily. She claimed it was unsightly and commercialized, violating aesthetic codes. I let her rant. Then I opened the file cabinet on our porch, pulled out laminated permits, printed emails from zoning officials, and even a letter of commendation from the mayor's office declaring our setup a model for neighborhood-scale youth innovation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smirk. I just handed it to her, page by page, while her assistants shifted awkwardly, and one eventually backed away. Karen didn't even finish reading them. She just turned, red-faced, and walked back down the driveway, nearly tripping over a tricycle. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt tired, not defeated, just done with war. Because this hadn't been about lemonade in a long time. It was about who gets to belong, who gets to create joy in spaces someone else tries to police with rules and clipped hedges. And Karen, deep down, must have known that no amount of clout could compete with what we had built. A business, a healing space, a new identity for our family. By winter, the juice bar went seasonal, closing up until spring. We built a small wooden facade to cover the counter, added fairy lights for the holidays, and Noah drew chalkboard snowflakes every morning. That's when something surprising happened. On a frosty December afternoon, I saw Karen pause at the edge of our yard, just outside the white picket border. She stood there for a long time, then awkwardly, hesitantly reached into her bag and placed a small envelope into our mailbox. No clipboard, no scowl, just an envelope. I opened it that evening, half expecting another threat. Instead, I found a Christmas card. Simple, no return address. Inside, one line in shaky handwriting. I still think rules matter, but I see that kindness does too. Merry Christmas to your family. There was no name. She didn't have to write it, but she did, and that changed everything. Spring arrived with soft winds and longer sunlight, and when the first weekend of April rolled around, we reopened Maddie and Noah's Juice Co. with a modest Season 2 sign made by Maddie herself, complete with hand-drawn oranges, mint leaves, and an ambitious promise of best juice ever, or your smile back. Our yard felt fuller this time, not with stuff but with story, like the grass had grown over our old wounds, and now carried the laughter of last summer in its roots. We had new tables, better signage, a couple of local partnerships, including a high school pastry program whose students sold muffins on weekends, and a string of neighborhood kids who showed up like volunteers at a family reunion, ready to help, to learn, to be part of something real. And Karen was quieter now. She didn't smile, not exactly, but she stopped filing complaints. She walked her dog at different times, and while she never stepped into the juice bar's welcome zone, she also never tried to sabotage it again. She became a shadow, not a treacherous part of the landscape, like any other stern old tree you'll learn to live around. There was one Saturday in May when we hosted a fundraiser for a local shelter, and Karen sat across the street on her porch, sipping tea, watching as kids sold bracelets and poetry, as music played from a soft jazz speaker, as the scent of watermelon mint juice drifted through the breeze, and I saw something flicker across her face, not anger, not surrender, but something closer to nostalgia. Maybe it reminded her of something she'd lost, or maybe it showed her something she never realized she needed. That same day, the mayor showed up again with his wife, smiling, asking about business expansion. Maddie gave him a loyalty punch card. Noah tried to upsell him cookies. They laughed. The newspaper did a piece on us called The Kids Who Juiced the HOA, and the story caught national attention. A local TV station came by, filming a short human interest segment where Maddie nervously answered questions with poise beyond her years, saying things like, "You don't have to be big to start something big," and Noah flexed his arms and said, "I lift oranges, bro." My heart almost burst. The juice bar became more than a stand. It became a symbol of healing, of pushback, of what happens when people choose connection over petty control. I was offered speaking opportunities at city events, invited to join small business panels, and even asked by neighboring communities how they could start something similar. And all the while, my kids stayed grounded. We didn't expand to other locations. We didn't sell the brand or take on investors. We kept it here, rooted in the story of what had happened, in the soil where Maddie once cried and where Karen once stood with her camera, like justice was something only she could define. Then, in late June, something unexpected happened. Fell ill. A neighbor told us quietly that she'd been diagnosed with something serious, that she was in and out of the hospital, and that her grown daughter had moved in to help. For a long time, I didn't know what to do with that information. But one morning, Maddie came out holding a small to-go cup of lemonade, her original recipe, and said, "Can I take this to her?" I hesitated, then nodded, because I knew that was the final chapter our story deserved. Maddie walked across the street and knocked gently. Karen's daughter answered, startled, and then smiled when Maddie simply said, "I made this for her. It's okay if she doesn't want it." I watched from the porch, heart in my throat. Karen appeared in the doorway, thinner now, softer somehow. eyes dim but open. She took the cup, whispered something I couldn't hear, and Maddie just smiled, waved, and walked back. No drama, no forgiveness speech. Just two humans, on opposite sides of a long battle, sharing a drink. That summer, we named our newest juice blend Olive Branch, a mix of lemon, basil, and white grape. It sold out every weekend. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it felt right. And the lesson was never about beating Karen. It was about showing my children what you do when someone tries to shrink your joy. You grow it louder, bigger, brighter, 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 and you never let bitterness become your blueprint. Because joy, when rooted in purpose and watered with kindness, grows stronger than rules, stronger than fences, stronger than even Karen. And as for Maddie and Noah's Juice Co., we're still here, still squeezing, still smiling, still standing, on the same patch of grass where a dream was nearly crushed, but never silenced, not by fear, not by HOA laws, and definitely not by a clipboard.